Part 1. Daniel was not a bad man. In fact, most people who met him for the first time described him as hardworking, intelligent, and passionate. But those who knew him closely understood a different side of him, the side that came out when things didn't go his way. His anger wasn't constant, but when it appeared, it was explosive. It showed up in traffic, at work meetings, at home with his family. Daniel often justified it by saying, "I just don't tolerate nonsense," but deep inside, he knew it was more than that. At work, Daniel was respected for his skills, but feared for his temper. A simple disagreement could turn into a heated argument. His voice would rise, his words would sharpen, and the room would fall silent. Later, when he sat alone at his desk, the regret would creep in. He replayed the moments in his head, wishing he had spoken differently, wishing he had stayed calm. But the next time anger knocked, he opened the door again. At home, it wasn't much better. His wife, Emily, loved him, but she walked on eggshells. Small things, spilled coffee, a late dinner, a misplaced key, could turn into unnecessary conflicts. Daniel never meant to hurt her. In fact, moments after his anger faded, he felt ashamed. He would apologize, promise to do better, and for a while, he truly believed he would change. But anger has a strange way of convincing you that you are right in the moment, even when you are wrong. Daniel believed his anger gave him control. He thought it made him strong, decisive, powerful. What he didn't realize was that every outburst was quietly taking something away from him: respect, trust, peace. One evening, after another argument at home, Daniel sat alone in his car, gripping the steering wheel. His chest felt heavy. "Why am I like this?" he whispered to himself. He wasn't angry at anyone that night. He was angry at himself. And for the first time, he felt afraid that if he didn't change, he might lose something he could never get back. Part 2. The breaking point came on a Monday morning. Daniel was already stressed when he arrived at work. Traffic had been terrible, and his coffee had spilled all over his shirt. During a team meeting, a junior colleague questioned one of Daniel's decisions. It wasn't rude. It wasn't disrespectful. But to Daniel, it felt like a challenge. Without thinking, he snapped. His words were harsh, humiliating, and loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. The meeting ended in uncomfortable silence. No one defended the colleague. No one defended Daniel either. Later that afternoon, Daniel was called into his manager's office. The conversation was calm, but the message was clear. "Your talent is valuable," the manager said gently, "but your behavior is not. This is your final warning." Those words hit Daniel harder than any shout ever could. For the first time, anger had cost him something real. His career was now on the line. That evening, Daniel didn't argue. He didn't shout. He just sat quietly at home, staring at the wall. Emily noticed the silence and sat beside him. "I'm scared," she said softly. "Not of you, but of what this anger is doing to us." Her voice trembled, and that broke something inside Daniel. That night, sleep didn't come easily. His mind replayed every argument, every raised voice, every door slammed in frustration. He realized something painful: anger had never solved his problems. It had only created new ones. And yet, he didn't know how to stop it. The next day, on his lunch break, Daniel walked into a small park near his office. He sat on a bench, trying to breathe through the tightness in his chest. An older man sat nearby, feeding birds. After a few minutes, the man looked at Daniel and said, "You look like someone fighting a war inside himself." Daniel laughed bitterly. "I'm losing," he replied. The old man nodded. "Most people do. Not because they are weak, but because they fight the wrong enemy." Those words stayed with Daniel long after the man walked away. For the first time, Daniel wondered if anger wasn't his weapon, but his enemy. Part 3. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about what the old man had said. Fighting the wrong enemy. That evening, instead of scrolling through his phone or replaying arguments in his head, he sat quietly. He noticed how his body reacted when he felt angry. His jaw tightened, his breathing became shallow, his thoughts raced. It was like his anger had a physical shape. The next day, he returned to the park, hoping to see the old man again. By chance, the man was there, sitting on the same bench. Daniel approached him and asked, "How do you fight the right enemy?" The man smiled. "You don't fight at all," he said. "You observe." He explained that anger was not the problem. Reaction was. Anger is a signal, he said. It tells you something matters. But reacting without pause, that's what destroys. He taught Daniel a simple rule. When anger rises, pause for 10 seconds. Breathe slowly. Say nothing. In those 10 seconds, the man said, "You take your power back." It sounded too simple. Almost foolish. But Daniel had tried everything else. Over the next few days, he practiced. The first time was in traffic. Someone cut him off, and the familiar surge of rage appeared. His hands tightened on the wheel, but he paused. He breathed. 10 seconds felt like forever. But when they passed, the anger softened. It didn't disappear completely, but it no longer controlled him. At work, the test was harder. A colleague made a mistake that affected Daniel's project. His instinct was to explode. Instead, he paused. His heart raced. His mind screamed. But he stayed silent. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. The conversation ended without conflict. That night, Daniel felt something new, peace. Not the absence of problems, but the absence of chaos inside him. He realized the secret wasn't about suppressing anger. It was about delaying reaction long enough to choose a better response. For the first time, Daniel understood that calmness wasn't weakness. It was strength under control. Part 4. Change didn't happen overnight. Daniel still felt anger. Sometimes intensely. But now, he recognized it before it exploded. At home, Emily noticed the difference. When things went wrong, Daniel paused instead of shouting. He listened. He spoke slower. Their home felt lighter. One evening, Emily said, "You're different." Daniel smiled and replied, "I'm learning to breathe before I speak." The real test came weeks later at work. During an important presentation, a client criticized Daniel's proposal harshly. The old Daniel would have defended himself aggressively. This time, he felt the anger rise, but he paused. 10 seconds. Slow breath. He listened. When he responded, his words were thoughtful, respectful, and confident. The room felt calm. The client nodded. The meeting ended successfully. Later, his manager said, "That was leadership." In that moment, Daniel understood something deeply. Anger had promised him power, but calmness actually delivered it. By controlling his reactions, he controlled his life. He still visited the park sometimes, but he never saw the old man again. Maybe he didn't need to. The lesson was already inside him. Daniel began sharing his experience with others, not as advice, but as a story. He told them that anger is natural. Losing control is not. That space between feeling and reacting, that's where growth lives. Part 5. Years later, Daniel looked back at the man he used to be and felt grateful. Not proud of his anger, but thankful for the lesson it taught him. Anger had shown him what he needed to fix, and calmness had shown him how. He realized that life will always test you. People will disappoint you. Situations will feel unfair. But you always have one choice, the choice to pause. That pause can save relationships, careers, and inner peace. Daniel's anger no longer controlled him. He controlled his response. And in that control, he found freedom. So the next time anger rises inside you, remember this. You don't need to win the moment. You need to protect your future. Breathe. Pause. Choose calm. Because calmness is not the absence of fire, it is the mastery of it. Outro. If this story touched something inside you, don't ignore it. The next time anger rises, remember Daniel's pause, the 10 seconds that changed everything. You may not control what happens to you, but you always control how you respond. And that response can shape your entire life. If this message helped you, share it with someone who needs it today. Stay calm, stay aware, and remember, true strength is quiet. If this story made you pause and reflect, don't let that feeling fade away. Anger will return, it always does, but now you know the truth, you don't have to obey it. In every heated moment, there is a small space where you can choose calm over chaos. Protect that space. Breathe before you react. And if this message helped you, pass it on to someone who needs peace today. Remember, the strongest people aren't the loudest, they're the calmest.